Today what I'd like to do is to frame my comments into three very simple and hopefully direct segments. Particularly looking forward and out of the recession, how do we move forward and what are the expectations of a Rhode Island economy over the next several months and certainly over the next several years. And the three segments I'm going to kind of lay out are what are our challenges, what are the critical issues that need to be resolved in several cases immediately to move forth with a sustainable and robust economy, what are the opportunities, what are the strengths that are already in place despite some of the deficiencies and challenges that we're wrestling with within our economy. And then third, what are the immediate priorities? What are we doing right now? And I hope that sets the stage for a context of really what I believe will form a very robust economic development strategy. And then I hope we can have some really dialogue about, are we on the right track? Are there things that we're missing? And then hopefully going forward, can we have a continued dialogue with you as we shape this economic development strategy? So what are the challenges? There are several, but I would share with you today the most significant challenge that we face in driving forth a sustainable economy in this state and really maintaining the quality of life within this state is having a balanced state budget. Today, at the General Assembly, they are wrestling with a $220 million operating deficit. Starting July 1, as a part of the four-year 11 budget, they are facing, at the minimum, a $405 million operating deficit. Now, the State Department of Administration Division of Revenue each year does a 4 or 5 year revenue forecast to begin to position ourselves in expecting what the expectations of budget forecasting might be and then what resources we might require to operate our state budgets. In the next 4 years, we're projecting at best anywhere from about a 1.5% to 2.5% revenue growth, mostly anchored in personal income tax and sales tax. And clearly, being in a recession, personal income is down, and certainly spending is down, so sales tax collections are down. So at best, we're seeing possibly a 2% increase over the next 4 years. Our fixed cost of just operating government, debt, fixed contract costs, personnel cost, federal mandates, other obligations, is running at about 5.5%. So as business persons, you kind of get the picture. If we don't do anything in changing the budget, we will see upwards of a $500 million operating deficit within 2 fiscal years. And in the next several years, particularly in the end of 2012, much of our federal stimulus monies, approaching $200 million, will end. So one of the things that's absolutely important that each and every one of us recognizes is that without a balanced budget, we will not have the basic resources to not only sustain and invest strategically and correctly in economic development, but in public education, public welfare, public infrastructure, all aspects of what the basic fundamental principles of a government should do. We will not have that opportunity. So moving forward, we need to be prepared that having a balanced budget that raises efficiently and equitably and fairly the necessary taxes to run the most efficient and effective government services. Now, that's all code words for regionalization, collaboration, efficiency, investment at scale. And being Rhode Island, the smallest state, if we can't do this, then no one can. And one of the things I remind public policy leaders each and every day as we go forth with this struggle is, the good news is we're not Texas, we're not California. That's the good news. So we have it. The political will, the participation of the people, the participation of the business community, which I'll talk about later, is absolutely imperative that we work together and move forward with a balanced budget. But it will call for and it will define that how government services are delivered very, very soon is going to change dramatically for all of us because of this significant budget operation deficit. I see it as an opportunity for innovation, investment at scale, in efficiency and accountability. But that is, in my estimation, the #1 challenge that we must face before we begin to really invest and sustain a competitive and robust economy. The second issue, we absolutely have to recognize the fact that there is no such thing as a Rhode Island economy. We are not a city-state, we're a city-region. And this New England marketplace is defined by the fact that, again, I go back, we're not Texas or California. In fact, New England can fit within Texas and California. So having a New England-based economy is absolutely important to recognize that products, services, customers, visitors, and tourism move between borders each and every day. And as we align tax policy, public education investment, workforce training, all of that at the very least has to be aligned to what the cost of operating a business and putting products out into the marketplace within the New England market, and particularly the borders that we share with Connecticut and Massachusetts. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of comparative studies on tax competitiveness and business climate, and many of you have seen these studies that compare the 50 states. And I have to tell you, I really have no interest in what's going on in South Dakota. We don't share very much of any business, products, services, customers with South Dakota. But we do with Massachusetts. So when we begin to realign tax policy, particularly corporate income tax, property tax, sales tax, at the very least it should be aligned with what's going on and what policy is in place in Mass and Connecticut. Because again, business people in a New England economy, but particularly in Rhode Island, this is my one political statement I'll make today. Business people in a New England economy vote with their feet. They just pick up and they go. So if it's more competitive from a cost standpoint or an access or reach to customers, and if you're in Middletown, you can be in Fall River. And if you're in Burrville, you can be in Connecticut. And if you're in Woonsocket, you can be in Attleboro in Massachusetts. And in fact, over the years, because we've not aligned our tax and investment policies to some of the growth and investment that's been going on in New England, we have found that we've leaked companies. We've leaked businesses who have made the right business decision to relocate to other states adjoining Rhode Island because of a competitive cost environment. And you know what? In doing that, they didn't lose customers, they didn't lose market access, they didn't lose vendors and suppliers, their workers could easily commute. And we need to recognize that being in a New England-based economy, we need to at the very least restructure and align our public cost structures to what's going on in our neighboring states. The third challenge is the investment in public education. The hallmark of a competitive, robust economy is having a well-trained and well-skilled workforce. Now, most of us today recognize the fact that we are struggling with a 12.6% unemployment rate, the third or fourth highest in the country. But very few people would recognize that out of the 75,000 people that are unemployed, there's another 430,000 people today who are working in Rhode Island. And out of that 430,000, those between the ages of 25 and 65, that prime working age, over 50% have just a high school education. Let me say that again. Over 50% of the men and women who are employed today in Rhode Island have just a high school education. And in a few minutes, when I talk about our strengths in the industry sectors that are growing, there is a tremendous disengagement between the demands of the skills and training of a workforce that's growing today and going forward and the basic educational capabilities of our existing workforce. For years, people would come to me and say, our greatest competitive asset was our well-trained, well-skilled workforce. I could absolutely agree, as someone who's a historian, I could absolutely agree that in the 19th century, we had a well-trained, high-skilled, industrial-based workforce. But in the 21st century, that's technology-based and education-based. And when I talk about the gazelle industry sectors that are growing today and going forward, you're going to see a tremendous disconnect. In fact, last night, Catherine and I were at the Providence Foundation presentation on the Providence Business Improvement District Plan, and they have the director of the Philadelphia program, who's one of the best presenters and speakers I've heard in many, many years. And he made a very striking comment where he talked about how Philadelphia is realigning itself into the knowledge-based economies, the life sciences. They're playing to the strengths of their higher educational institutions, their health and hospital and research laboratories. And he made a very compelling statement that I think I whispered to Bill in the meeting. I said, I'm going to grab this line because it really indicates exactly where we are. And what he said is, in Philadelphia, we're moving away from training workers for the assembly line to prepare workers to be online. And he was absolutely right. And that strategy has paid off in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and Indianapolis and many other of these mid-sized communities who just 25 years ago, who would go to Pittsburgh or even Philadelphia or in Indianapolis. And today, they're the fast trajectory growth communities. They're the lifestyle, live, work, and play communities of America. Not the big guys, not the LAs and the New Yorks, but that next tier. And Providence has every opportunity to become the capital of New England and be that next tier growth company in similar industries of life science, knowledge-based technologies, financial services. But I go back to that challenge. If we don't have a well-trained, educated workforce, what happens? Well, the very fact that we're not California and Texas, the easy answer is We'll create jobs for other states